Microsoft announced that PowerApps is going to be the closest successor to Infopath Forms, which is it's a little interesting because PowerApps is not a strictly one-to-one feature parity in with Infopath Forms. It You also can't expect to have all the same features. So, for example, it it does not have a backend C# model for you to customize some specific piece of content. It's not compatible with Infopath Forms for your mobile devices. So if you want to see PowerApp Forms, you have to rely on the dedicated PowerApps viewing platform. But that being said, it's still in the initial rollout. There is not yet a migration path from Infopath to the PowerApps platform, so some of the details are still a little murky here, but hopefully we'll start seeing more of a feature parity between both platforms. But if you're thinking about creating a new form, it's probably a safe bet at this stage, especially if you're on SharePoint Online, to go ahead and try out PowerApps versus SharePoint List Forms or Infopath Forms, which Infopath Form services have also been deprecated in SharePoint Online. So if you wanted to create a server-driven Infopath Forms, your options are either PowerApp, SharePoint List Forms, or you may need to rely on third-party products such as Nintex. So I don't have a direct PowerApp integrated list just yet, so I figured I'll just show you some of this from a screenshot standpoint. So imagine a SharePoint standard list, and I know the look and feel of the list is more consistent with the new modern document library view, but the list views are also being updated to reflect that state, and it's not yet rolled out to my demo tenant, but you may have already seen it. So integrating with PowerApp is fairly straightforward. So you can see how there's a create PowerApp shortcut here, and then it takes you to a PowerApp designer, and you can create a mobile view or a desktop view, whatever you like, and it's a fairly intuitive interface. Add validations and checks, and make sure that it is connected to a list, and you can also create lookup drop downs from multiple lists or even non-SharePoint data sources. Create your model and publish it back to your site, so you can kind of have a mini app for a lot of simple operations like a leave request form or an expense report, that kind of thing. You can roll these kinds of forms out very quickly with PowerApps. Another question I get asked a lot is what about workflows? So first off, the existing SharePoint workflows and also the workflow manager platform are not going away. They're still probably your first preference for creating any kind of workflows in SharePoint, and it is continuing to be supported. There is zero fear of that. The Microsoft Flow platform is probably a safer bet, especially for SharePoint Online customers. If you are trying to create workflows, not just limited to SharePoint, but increasingly with the introduction of Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM, we are starting to see more of the Dynamics product line as well as additional services being rolled into the Office 365 world. So if you'd like to have an integration layer with a workflow between multiple services, Microsoft Flow is probably a better bet to create some of those experiences. If you're an on-prem customer, continue using Workflow Manager or a SharePoint Workflows platform. It is still a better choice for most intents and purposes. But if you have a hybrid connectivity model, or if there's a specific reason to use Microsoft Flow, especially if you've got let's say some resources on Microsoft Azure, for instance, and you need to connect to multiple data models, you can still use Flow to connect with SharePoint on-prem data. So if you've got a list in SharePoint on-prem and a list in Dynamics 365 in the Office 365 world, you can still create a single workflow that can tie in to both of these areas. So let me I can quickly show you how Flow and PowerApps could look like. So you can see how you can start start creating a simple workflow from scratch here, but for the purpose of our discussion, I'm just going to go ahead and choose from a template, and there's quite a bit of template that covers some interesting scenarios. The icons on the left of each template kind of showcases the different services that it interacts with, and you'll notice that in some of these cases, especially here, it is also tying into products and services that's outside of Office 365 or even Microsoft in general. So there's a lot of interesting little use cases here, and if something doesn't fit your bill, you can always create a simple web service that can tie into a custom data source in your organization and have that powering a SharePoint list. So for example, if you've got a database today within your organization and it's got some tables and some information that you need to create a form for like a drop down, you can create a very simple wrapper around it in the form of a web service or use one of the existing third-party connectors and have that available along with the Microsoft Flow to connect both instances. So there's quite a bit of different ways to get to integrate with multiple different data platforms, especially in the SharePoint Online world. Give a shot with Flow. It was recently taken out of preview, so it's now production ready from Microsoft side. And the last bit is Flow works very well with PowerApps, and if you're trying to create especially custom forms especially for remote users, if you're trying to create like a form that a user can pull up on their mobile device or see a list of customers or add a new lead while they're on the road, form or any other kind of form need, the PowerApps platform is a much better area to kind of create some of these things. So you can see how this is a dedicated app that's built as available as a part of a template like an expense tracker, and this kind of an app can be made available quickly to a mobile app with a SharePoint list powering the backend for a data source. So lots of different templates here, and all of PowerApps or some of the PowerApps are under the Dynamics 365 umbrella, but by and large they can still work with SharePoint and as well as third-party data sets. So give this a shot. Very useful to create quick and simple line of business applications without investing in full-on custom solutions, especially if you use SharePoint today as your primary intranet portal.